cortex, cortex meaning rind. So it's the outer rind of the kidney. Okay? Now, anything that's in the middle of the kidney is going to be contained within the medulla. That is known as the renal medulla. And there are certain features contained within. Now, this is something known as a renal pyramid. Do you see the pyramid shape? Yes? At the apex of the pyramid, bless you, is something known as the minor calyx. The minor calyx means small cup. So if you look at a tulip, the cup portion of the actual tulip would be the minor calyx. The stem would become part of the major calyx. So when urine is produced, it's going to flow from the renal pyramid to the minor calyx. Do you see, let me adjust it this way. Do you see this feature right about here or here? That would be the minor calyx. The minor feeds into the major. Major feeds into the renal pelvis. So in the human, you might have 18 to 23 minor calyces feeding into 2 or 3 majors. Typically, if you get drafted in a sport activity, such as baseball, you normally are going to go to the minor leagues. Then when they develop you and you're farther along, you're more mature, you will then hopefully go to the major leagues. So you go minor to major. Once we go to major, then you're going to be fed right into the renal pelvis. From the pelvis, you go into the ureter. The ureter is going to be that piece of plumbing that's going to direct the urine down into the urinary bladder. So let's review. Here's our pyramid. This is our minor calyx. This and this would be our major calyces feeding into our renal pelvis, feeding into our ureter. Now, between our pyramids, we're going to have areas known as renal columns. So a renal column is just going to be that's going to be a continuous area between the renal cortex and the renal medulla. Now, 85% of the nephrons are going to be cortical nephrons. 15% are juxtamedullary. That means they're going to be positioned somewhat between the cortex and the medulla. All right? So 85% will come from the cortex. 15% will come as juxtamedullary. Okay. Now we have to obviously talk about that in lecture, but I want you to pay attention really closely because obviously this is going to be our renal artery. This would be our renal vein. Normally surrounding this kidney would be a renal capsule. Now there are normally 3 capsules surrounding the kidney. The first one that's actually on the kidney is the renal capsule. You'll have renal fascia. And you will have an adipose capsule. So when you look at the cat today, as you're looking, you will see the kidney buried within the fat. The kidney is going to be retroperitoneal. That means it lies directly behind the peritoneum. Retro means to stretch around back. So the kidney itself will be lying posterior to your parietal peritoneum. Okay? All right, are there questions? We'll talk more specifically about the blood flow because about 20% of your cardiac output is going to go to the kidney so it can do its job. That's a significant amount of blood. Now, what is the nitrogenous waste that has to be excreted by the kidney? What's the one thing that contains nitrogen that you ingest? Protein. So you have to be able to get rid of the nitrogen by way of the creation of urea. And taking excessive quantities of protein is really not beneficial because, number one, after we strip off the amine group, you can't store it as fat. Number two, we're working the kidney much harder to help you get rid of the nitrogenous waste. Okay? Now, that's what the kidney is going to look like. Now, I will show a sheep kidney. You're going to be okay?
No, on the front, it's going to be either or.
It's probably going to be either or. Plus, we'll be able to tease out the entire urinary system of the cat. This one isn't dissected particularly well. However, can you see the piece of plumbing known as the ureter? You're going to have two ureters. Here are our pyramids. Here is our minor calyx. Then it would go into the major, and then gradually, if I stuck this through, you would see that it end up through the pelvis into the ureter. So anything contained in this area here would be medullary. Anything here would be cortical. You do not see the renal capsule here because we don't have the rest of the specimen.
Is that medullary and capsule or something?
Anything in here would be medullary within the medulla. So your minor calyx, etc., was going to be contained within the medulla. Anything cortical will be out here. As I said, cortex means rind, so it's like the rind of an orange. Okay. Now, we need to talk about boy plumbing. Mrs. Montgomery has put some models out for us to look at, but you have a diagram that you got in lecture. Okay, obviously this would be the penis, this would be a uncircumcised, or the prepuce would be existent on this individual. The scrotum would be here. It is normal for one testy to hang lower than the other. Not unusual. Ladies, you will have also one breast that hangs lower. Not to mention other things. Okay, here we go. Now, I'll get you oriented so you have... Okay, does this look like our diagram? Okay. So, obviously this is the glans penis. This is going to be our corpora cavernosa. It's number 583. Do you remember that from the diagram? Okay. Number 580, from the looks of things, is going to be, actually 580 is going to be the crust of the penis. That's where it's going to embed into the abdominal wall, so it doesn't fall off. Now, we obviously have the bladder. This passageway is going to be one that is going to be termed according to its location. So you're going to have a prosthetic urethra, you're going to have a membranous urethra, and a spongy urethra. If you call it the urethra, it can't be wrong. Just make sure you've got the right piece of specimen. Okay, now, this is the prostate, right there. There's the golf ball. Now, gentlemen, you really do need to have a prostate exam, and what they're going to do is a digital rectal exam. They will insert their finger in so they'll be able to palpate the prostate. You can also have the blood test done. However, I'm here to tell you that having a prostate-specific antigen that's not high is not an indicator at all of whether or not you have prostate cancer. My brother had back pain. He had a stage of prostate cancer. He worked in the plastics industry. He now just has gone through having to have a stent placed into his ureter because he also ended up with bladder cancer. He had chosen to have the radioactive isotopes embedded into his prostate. But because of the industry that he worked in, he ended up with bladder cancer at the same, shortly after. Okay? He called me and said there's something wrong, and I'm like, well, okay, tell me. And he said that, you know, I've been bleeding, so there's blood in his urine, and what it ended up to be was bladder cancer. Okay? So, don't delay. Please make sure, and I will bring the specimens in. You will not be able to palpate them. You wouldn't know that there are 4 spots that are cancerous on this gland. You would never know. It's pretty remarkable. Okay, so there's our prostate. Remember, we're going to have a seminal vesicle, that's number 182. That's going to add its secretions to the area of the vas deferens. So the vas is going to enter in directly above the prostate, or right in the middle of the prostate. In Fluffy, what you'll see is after the pubic bone has been broken, you'll be able to see the bladder, the prostate. The prostate is actually going to surround the urethra. That's why sometimes as you age, you're going to have a little bit of difficulty in voiding. Because as that prostate swells, it clamps down on the urethra. You may be able to only get a couple of drips out. So you may be waking up frequently at night, having the need to void, but not being able to do so because it's swollen and clamped shut. Okay, so now we need to go down, and what we're going to see is number 592 is going to be that gland that is the primary organ of reproduction. That is going to be the testes. Luteinizing hormone, testosterone, etc. From the inner portion of that, the spermatozoa are going to move along with their nurse cells to the head, the body, and the tail of the epididymis. Then it's going to travel back upward through the abdominal wall to enter directly above the prostate. Okay? So, this area right here would be the epididymis. Means upon testing. All right. The area here is going to be something known as the spermatic cord. If you look right here, that is going to be the spermatic cord because it's containing the nerves, the arteries, the veins, the vas deferens to carry it up. Vas deferens comes off, drops around behind the bladder, and enters above the prostate. The arteries will go down, the veins will go back up. Remember the gonadal vein? That's going to enter left renal. The other gonadal vein is going to dump into IVC. So that's going to, and again, it is very normal in order to ensure that the penis stays healthy and the testes stay healthy, that there will be some erections throughout the night and sometimes during the day. That's very normal, just to ensure that everything is circulating. So very normal. Okay, questions? Sweet. Now I am going to show a testy, but it's sheepy. Now, this is going to be the spermatic cord, and we may be able to see, if I dissect it out a little bit, you'd be able to see ductus, but I'm not going to do that right now. Here is our head, here is our body, here is our tail of the epididymis. Then the sperm will be moved with their nurse cells into the ductus deferens. Notice? Ductus deferens, looks like they cut it, sorry. Ductus deferens is going to be running right alongside it, and the way that you know it is it's always going to have a sigmoid pattern in it. Always. So if you look closely, you'd be able to see it. Now I will show you the inner portion. Okay. Now, do you see this? Oops. Remember we talked about the tunica vaginalis and the tunica albuginea? I really don't see much vaginalis unless we look at this tissue right here. That would be the tunica vaginalis. That normally would surround the entire testy. So if you see a big flap, that's the tunica vaginalis. Okay, so now, same structures. Here's our head, there's our body, there's our tail. Then ductus deferens. I don't know if you can see. Can you see the squiggly pattern?
Yeah.
What does that tell you? That's the ductus deferens. Okay, here's the spermatic cord. We got that part. We open the door. Now, all of this would be something known as the seminiferous tubules. In the human male, there's 700 feet of seminiferous tubule. That's why they can be very busy in the production of sperm. So that when the sperm are produced, they'll move into the central canal. From there, they will travel through a duct into the epididymis, head, body, and tail. The epididymis' responsibility is to store and mature the sperm. If they're not utilized within 42 days, the body will resorb them. Okay? So, if there's a tag here, you're going to say seminiferous tubule. If the tag, sorry guys. If the tag is here, that would be the tunica albuginea. See a worm-like pattern in it also? It's white.
That's directly on the testes,
It's directly on the testy itself. So that outer covering of the testy is going to be the tunica albuginea. It has that white squiggly pattern.
And then in the middle is like what?
Central canal, seminiferous tubules. Are we okay with the male? When you look at Fluffy, you'll be able to see, sometimes you'd be able to see the crust of the penis right there. Because that's where it's going to embed into the wall. You might also be able to see the bulb, and you may or may not be able to see the bulbourethral glands. It just depends, yeah.
Will Fluffy be our practical?
Yes.
So your reproductive will be like these?
It's
Or-
going to be a combination of everything, I think.
Okay. Yeah, I know.
I really don't have a clue.
Okay.
I'd like to, but I don't.
That's what plastic do.
What I may do is I may come in just so I can take a look at things.
Fix it.
Well, if I see something that I don't like, I will definitely fix it.
Yes.
Okay, ladies. It's our turn. I better get that. Delete that. Delete that. Okay,
Looks like a baby elephant.
yeah, it actually does. All right, so here's what happens. Ladies, you're born with your full complement of eggs. And you'll mature them very slowly. You normally don't get any more. Males, however, can produce consistently throughout their lifespan, although the little spermy guys get a little tired. So now, your uterus is 2 by 2 by 3 centimeters. It's pear-shaped. However, it can increase approximately 52 times its size. So you will see somebody almost to term in that last model. Now, when the baby is ready to be delivered, obviously it's going to hopefully go upright, or not upright, because then we'd have a leg hanging out. But what would happen is it's going to do what's known as crowning. The reason for the head down is to ensure that it dilates and it faces the cervix. Okay, so let's get acquainted. These would be our oviducts with our fimbriae, little fingers. Our ovary is going to be here. This, again, would be the oviduct. You call it your fallopian tube. We open the door and we look inside. Now, this is a very highly vascularized membrane known as the endometrium. This is what you're going to slough off each month if you have a menstrual period. If you don't, what has happened is the fetus has embedded into the wall. Placenta will develop after a couple months, and so things are highly evolving and changing. So, this is going to be the fundus. We're going to go down, then right here, this would be the cervix. This is what they scrape with the thin prep. Okay? To see whether or not there's any dysplasia. Pay attention to it. All right? So if you get several pap smears that have abnormal cells, they probably will ask you to go in for a cone biopsy. They could ask for a colposcopy, which is they're going to take a small sample of that surface. Okay? Now, some of you have already been exposed to the human papillomavirus and not be aware of it. You wouldn't necessarily know because your plumbing is internal. Have no way of knowing. So it's a matter of staying healthy and not letting those changes occur. But if they do occur, take some action. When I was in college, I had been raped by 4 people when I was working on my master's. I did not know at that time that ultimately it would lead me to lose my ovaries, my uterus, my oviducts. Yeah, I had a cyst on the broad ligament. I thought that was okay. But then I kept getting pap smears that were abnormal, abnormal, abnormal. Then I'd have a normal one, then I'd have abnormal, abnormal, abnormal. Until finally they said it's got to come out. So